Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to go to France, and this is my first French review for you in quite some time, but we're going to go to the southwest of France to a little village called Curemont and have a visit to Brasserie Corrézienne, and this will be their La Noire beer, which is their porter. And all of the beers from these guys are really highly rated on Beer Advocate and ratebeer.com, so it was really cool that I was able to bring one of these back from France for you and review it. French beer is really good, but it's one of these countries where it's really hard to get their beer in the English speaking world, so if you're interested particularly in French beer, I would recommend both that you have a look at Tasting Niche's channel, she's really into her French beer, and also that you go and have a check out of La Cave à Boulet in Paris, and it runs parallel to one of the main shopping streets as you go past Notre Dame. It's just further down that way in Paris, and it's a really excellent little beer shop. The guy in there speaks English and he helped me pick out all of these beers, so go and check out La Cave à Boulet. Some awesome stuff in all French beer, but they do have some foreign stuff as well. So anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very kind of brief history of the brewery. It is very short because it's a very new company. Just fast forward to the tasting if you want to get straight there. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I will hopefully get to do from these guys in the very near future. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about this brewery, as I mentioned to you, the brewery is from Curemont in the very southwest, in the sort of southwest of France, and it was founded by Boris Chartier in 2008. Now Boris was an engineer by trade, but he'd been an avid home brewer for about 15 years before he eventually decided to found Brasserie Corrézienne. Now the brewery is based in Curemont in the southwest of France, which Boris says is one of the most beautiful villages in the country. It's somewhere in the region of Bordeaux. I believe it's just a little bit kind of southeastish of where Bordeaux is, if memory serves me correctly for the geography of France. But the idea of his own brewery came to him in 2006 when he moved home, and he eventually left his job as an engineer in a renewables energy company and went on to found Brasserie Corrézienne. And since that time they've actually developed a range of 12 different beers, and as I said, they're very well rated on ratebeer and beeradvocate.com, so go and check them out and have a look for yourself. Just to list a few of the other beers you can get from these guys, you have the Blonde, Ambry, Triple, Prairial, which is an English IPA, Florareal, which I couldn't find what type of beer that was, Rouge, which is obviously red beer, Chalot Roussat, which is a Belgian dark beer, Hop Hop Hop, which is an American pale ale, Noir, which is this guy here, the porter, Blanche, which is a wit beer, Dordogne Valley, which is an American double, and they also have Boris Godunov, named after the owner, which is an imperial stout, and I guess that's probably his favourite type of beer. To tell you about this guy itself, this guy is a 4.5% porter. The malts in this one are pale Cara, and I think it's torrefied wheat if I remember my French correctly on the website, and the hops in this guy is First Gold and Goldings hops, so I believe they're both English hops, but correct me on that if I'm wrong, so it should be quite a nice porter for us to try. And it's 4.5% volume, and of course the style is a porter, as I mentioned to you before. So let me just bring up the camera and let you have a little quick look at the artwork on this one. Nice and simple. The labels from these guys are actually, they're very well done, but they are very nice and very simple, and I do kind of like that when a beer's kind of the labels are quite good, but some of them you get really nice artwork, but some of them you get really simple and kind of effective artwork, and I think these guys definitely go for that. You can see a kind of owl sitting there with his hat and his kind of walking stick there. It's just a plain bottle cap on this guy. Tells you a little bit on the side about the beer. 33 centilitres, 4.5% volume, lot 1302, 35 IBUs, and yeah, it just says composition, water, malts and hops in this guy. The address, Brasserie Corrézienne, Lagrange, 19500 Curemont, France. So yeah, it's really nice. I'll put the website in the description for you below, so as I say, check that out if you're interested. But without further ado, let's get on with the tasting of this guy. So as you can see, a nice kind of smoky opening on there. Just as I open that, you can really smell, this is quite a sweet porter. You get a lot of sweet chocolate just as you open up the bottle. So as you can see, pours a really nice kind of dark sort of rosewoody mahogany colour. That's the kind of term I always use for describing these beers, because I was always into my guitars and it always reminds me of sort of ebony wood and rosewood, this colour. There's a good bit of sediment actually floating around in the bottom of this. As you can see, it's poured a nice kind of half finger sort of, it's not really a beigey head actually, it's more of a creamy coloured head, this one. Definitely off-white though, maybe just a little hint of beige in it, but it's more of a kind of creamy colour. If I put my fingers behind it, as I said, you can't see through this one at all. There is a good bit of sediment floating around in the glass. I think you can see the kind of particles of it just sort of sticking up there on the glass, but it looks really nice. There's a little bit of carbonation just going up towards the bottom of the head there, but the head is holding strong and it looks really nice. So let's have a look at the aroma of this guy. So it has all the kind of typical elements that you would expect from a porter beer. You're getting the nice dark roasted malts, some kind of caramel and brown sugars in there. There's a little bit of smoke in this guy, and there's almost just a little bit of a kind of meaty aroma to this one, which is quite interesting. But you've got a nice chocolatey sweetness to it that's just kind of coming out. There's maybe a little bit of vanilla, and there is a definite kind of estery sort of stone fruit kind of element to this guy. A little bit of a kind of candied fruit. It always reminds me of Haribo sweets, but there is a definite element of kind of candied fruit in this guy, and some stone fruit, you know, the sort of figs, raisins, plums and things like that. That kind of really dark element that you expect from the porter beer. But if you sugar it up, that's when you start to get these kind of fruity estery aromas to it. But the main component in the beer, it's a nice sweet dark chocolate. There's a little bit of roasted malt in there, a little bit of coffee, and a nice kind of little bit of sort of brown roasted sugar element to it as well. But I think there is definitely an element of smoky and meaty character to it, which is quite interesting too. But it has all the typical elements that you expect from the aroma of a porter beer. So without further ado, let's get on to the tasting. This is La Brasserie Corrézienne and the La Noire beer, porter beer. Cheers. It's really nice. It has a very... First impression of the beer is that it has a very nice wet mouthfeel, and that's one thing I've found with French beer. It has that really nice wet mouthfeel, but it certainly doesn't lack in flavour. It's sort of... a lot of the French beers are very easy drinking, and this one is kind of no exception to that particular mouthfeel, if you like, but it's definitely full of flavour. So much like the aroma, it's got all the components you expect. The sort of roasted coffee element in this one is the most prominent bit, and you just get that around the edge of the palate there. But the coffee, the roasted coffee, comes in with a big kind of bitter bite to it, which is quite interesting. At the same time, you have that really kind of wet mouthfeel to it, which is an interesting complement to the flavour. Yeah, you've got just this nice coffee bitterness that just sits not quite right at the edge of the tongue, but it just sits inside the palate a little bit. And you've got this really nice kind of moist, watery sort of wet flavour to it, and it complements it really well. Sometimes a lot of porter beers can be quite hard to drink just because of how thick they are, but this one has the full flavour, but it's a lot easier to drink, so it's really interesting in that regard. So yeah, you've got a nice kind of roasted coffee element, some kind of there's a little bit of nice kind of chocolatey sweetness just towards the back of the palate there, but it's very mild. The main element that I'm getting from this beer is the roasted coffee. But you can pick up just in the middle of the palate, there is a definite element of the kind of fruity esters and kind of stone fruit, so you're getting just a little bit of the kind of figs, raisins and plums in there. Not so much the candied fruit coming out, it's definitely more of a sort of stone fruit in this one. The candied fruit must just be coming out in the aroma a little bit. But you can pick up just a little bit of that kind of roasted caramel element, but it really is the kind of roasted coffee that punches its way through in this aroma. It's a very kind of coffee-ish porter, this one, in my opinion. But yeah, you just get a little bit of an oily bubble that moves towards the front of the tongue, and that's where you're getting a lot of the fruity esters, the figs, raisins, plums sort of thing, and just there is a touch of that candied fruit, but it's mainly a sort of raisiny or plum thing. It's quite a sharp sort of fruity element you're getting to this beer. As you sort of move through it as well, you can pick up just a little bit of a kind of yeasty character in this one as you kind of the sort of middle of the palate where you're getting the malty elements of the beer, a little bit of the caramel. You're actually getting a sort of building of the kind of sort of yeasty character in this beer. It's quite interesting that because it does have just a little element of yeast to it. So it's a very interesting element, this one. As I say, the French beers tend to be very easy drinking and have quite a wet mouthfeel, but they certainly don't lack in flavour, and this guy really is like that. It's got a huge big flavour, but it has this really nice wet mouthfeel to it. It's kind of nice in terms of the mouthfeel, then it's nice and mid-bodied, but at the same time it's sort of pushing more towards the lighter end of the scale, so it's very light actually for a porter. As I said, there's a very nice wetness to it which makes it very easy to drink, but it does at the same time have a nice big bit of bitterness to it. The coffee bitterness is the most prominent component of the flavour in this one. And that's really what lingers into the aftertaste. There's not really much of the bready or the roasted sugar and things. It's a big coffee, bitterish porter, this guy, but it's very easy drinking. You know, it's an ideal dessert beer if you've kind of eaten a big heavy meal and you want a nice kind of dark coffee-ish taste like this to kind of just see you through. So overall, I'd say it's a really nice, fully flavoured porter. It has the typical elements of the French beer where it's got a wet mouthfeel and it's easy to drink. If you like a porter beer that kind of focuses more on the coffee end of things than the sort of milky chocolate and the fruity element, this is definitely a guy you want to go for, because that's the real lingering flavour in the aftertaste of this one. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. This has been another really interesting French review that I've been able to do for you, so thank you again to the guys at La Cave Boulet for recommending this beer for me. I hope those of you watching in France can understand my crazy accent and stuff and enjoy the French beer reviews. There will be a few more reviews from France for you in the very near future. I thank you again for watching, and please comment and let me know your own thoughts on this beer, and like, subscribe, share, all the usual stuff, and I will catch you soon with my next beer review. Cheers!